What's new?
Train to Busan, released in 2016, directed by Yon-suk. This is one of those movies that comes around once in a decade and completely changes the way you think about a genre. When people talk about zombie movies, they usually bring up names like Night of the Living Dead, 28 Days Later, or World War Z. But after 2016, Train to Busan earned its place right alongside those legends, and in many ways, it surpassed all of them. This movie is South Korean. It came out on July 20th, 2016 in South Korea, and it hit international screens shortly after. It was not a Netflix original. It was a full theatrical release, shown in cinemas all around the world. It was produced by Next Entertainment World, and it was distributed widely across Asia, Europe, and eventually North America. When it came out, people were not fully ready for what they were about to experience. A South Korean zombie film about a train ride that turns into a nightmare. That sounds simple. But Train to Busan is anything but simple. Sang-hwa, the director, had a background in animation. His earlier works were dark, mature animated films that dealt with heavy social themes. So when he moved into live-action filmmaking with Train to Busan, he brought that same deep understanding of human nature and society with him. He did not make a zombie movie just to scare people. He made a zombie movie to say something real about the world, about people, about selfishness, and about love. The genre of this film is horror and action, but calling it just that would be underselling it completely. It is also a deeply emotional family drama. It is a survival thriller. It is a social commentary wrapped inside a fast-moving, heart-pounding story that never gives you a chance to breathe. The premise is this. A busy, emotionally absent father named Seok-woo is taking his young daughter Soo-an on a train from Seoul to Busan to visit her mother. It is her birthday, and she wants to see her mom. The father is the kind of man who is always working, always thinking about money and business, and barely paying attention to his daughter. He is not a bad person, but he is a distracted one. He has lost something important inside himself along the way, and this train ride is about to force him to find it again. But of course, things go terribly wrong. A zombie outbreak is spreading across South Korea, and before anyone on the train fully understands what is happening, an infected person gets on board. And then everything falls apart. The train becomes both a sanctuary and a death trap. The passengers are trapped inside a long metal tube hurtling through a country that is already falling into chaos, and they have to fight, cooperate, argue, betray, and sacrifice in order to survive. Story explanation. The movie opens before the chaos, before the zombies, before anything goes wrong. And this opening is important because it establishes the world, and it sets up who these people are when everything is still normal. We see a deer on the road. A quarantine official is doing his job, checking fields, looking for signs of contamination. It feels routine. It feels boring. And then the deer, which was dead on the road, suddenly gets up. Its eye opens. Its body jerks back to life in a wrong, horrible way. And it stumbles away. This is the first hint. The world is already broken. Something has already started. But nobody knows yet. Then we cut to Seok-woo. He is a fund manager. He works in finance. His job is basically moving money around and making more money for rich people. He is good at his job. He is sharp, focused, and professional. But at home, at least the home he shares with his young daughter Soo-an and his elderly mother, he is almost invisible. He is there physically, but not emotionally. He forgets things. He buys his daughter the same gift twice because he cannot remember what he already gave her. He does not notice what she needs or what she feels. Soo-an is a small girl, maybe around 10 years old. She is quiet, thoughtful, and much more emotionally mature than her father. She participates in a school performance, a choir, or a singing event, and she sings beautifully. But when she looks out into the audience for her father, he is not there. Or he is there, but he is on his phone, distracted, only half present. This is who these two people are at the start of the movie. A father who does not know how to be present, and a daughter who is trying to be patient with him. Soo-an wants to go to Busan. She wants to see her mother. Her parents are separated, and her mother lives in Busan. It is Soo-an's birthday or close to it, and she wants her father to take her. Seok-woo is not thrilled about this. He is busy. He has work. But he agrees. He is going to take her on the KTX, the high-speed train from Seoul to Busan, and they will spend some time together, and then she will see her mother. Before they board the train, we see a little more of the world around them. There are news reports playing on screens in the background. Something is happening somewhere. There are hints of trouble, of unrest, of things not being right. But like most people in the real world, the characters are not paying attention to the news. They have their own lives to worry about. This is a very clever and very real detail. How many times in real life do we see warning signs and ignore them because we are too wrapped up in our own routines? At the train station, we start to meet the other passengers. And this is where the movie really starts building its world, because Train to Busan is not just about Seok-woo and Soo-an. It is an ensemble film, and the other characters matter enormously. There is Sang-hwa. He is a big man, physically imposing, loud, and funny. He is traveling with his wife Seong-kyeong, who is very pregnant. She is close to giving birth, and Sang-hwa is the proudest, most protective husband you can imagine. He is not a complicated man in terms of what he wants. He loves his wife, he wants his child to be born safely, and he will do whatever it takes to protect his family. From the moment we see him, there is something immediately likable about him. He is real. He is warm. He is the kind of person who does not overthink anything, who just acts. There is Yong-guk, a young man who plays on a baseball team, traveling with his girlfriend Jin-hee. They are teenagers, and their relationship is sweet and a little awkward in the way teenage relationships are. Yong-guk carries a baseball bat, which will become very important later. He is young and not fully aware of who he is yet, but the events of this journey will force him to grow up very fast. There is an older woman, a grandmother figure, who is traveling with her younger sister. The two elderly sisters are a pair that we do not immediately focus on, but who become increasingly important as the story moves forward. And then there is Yon-suk. He is a businessman, well-dressed, polished, and immediately presenting himself as someone important and in charge. He is the kind of man who believes his status and his money give him the right to make decisions for others. He talks about himself as someone who has built a company, who employs people, who matters. From the very beginning, there is something uncomfortable about him. He is polite on the surface, but there is a coldness underneath that you can feel even before anything bad happens. There are other passengers too, ordinary people filling the train, and together they represent a cross-section of Korean society. Young and old, rich and working class, powerful and powerless. The train is a microcosm of the world, and the zombie outbreak is going to expose exactly what each of these people is made of. The train departs. Seoul falls behind them. The journey to Busan has begun. And then, just before things go completely wrong, there is one more character we need to meet. A homeless man, ragged and frightened, who manages to sneak onto the train just before it leaves the station. He is shaking and terrified, and it seems like he has seen something horrible. He does not speak much at first. He hides. But his presence on the train is a signal. Something has followed him on board. The infected woman who boards the train just before the doors close is the spark that lights the fire. She is already turning. Her body is in the process of transformation. One leg is bent at a wrong angle. Her eyes are going blank and then filling with something else, something violent and hungry. She collapses in one of the train cars, and for a moment, a train attendant approaches to help her. That moment of basic human kindness, going to help someone who looks hurt, is the moment everything changes. The attendant gets too close. And within seconds, the transformation is complete and the violence begins. This is where the movie shifts gears completely. The calm, the ordinary, the familiar world of people sitting on a train reading their phones and listening to music, it all shatters. The infected move fast in this film. They are not slow, shambling zombies. They run. They snap. They overwhelm. And once someone is bitten, the time it takes for them to turn is horrifyingly short, sometimes just seconds. This creates a terror that is completely different from the slow zombie movies of the past. There is no time to think. There is no time to plan. There is barely enough time to react. The infection spreads through the train like fire through paper. Car by car, the zombies multiply. Passengers who were sitting peacefully moments ago become violent, twisting, shrieking creatures that attack everything around them. The screaming begins. The running begins. The chaos begins. Seok-woo grabs Soo-an and starts moving. He does not fully understand what is happening yet. Nobody does. But his instinct is to protect his daughter and to move away from the danger, and so they run forward through the train, towards the front cars. This is where we see the first real fracture in human behavior. Some people help each other. Some people hold doors open. Some people grab hands and pull strangers to safety. But others, and this is where the social commentary becomes very sharp, others think only of themselves. When passengers from the infected cars start banging on the doors of the safer cars, asking to be let in, asking for help, there is a group of people who refuse to open the doors. They are afraid. They cannot tell who is infected and who is not. And leading this group, subtly but definitely, is Yon-suk. Seok-woo, at this early stage of the film, also makes a selfish choice. He is outside a car with Sang-hwa and some others, trying to get through, and there is a brief moment where his instinct is to protect only himself and his daughter. He is not yet the hero. He is still the man he was at the beginning, someone who operates on a principle of looking out for number one. This is intentional. The movie is not going to let him be a hero from the start. It is going to make him earn it. Sang-hwa is different from the beginning. When there are people in danger, he moves toward them. He uses his size and his strength to fight the zombies, to clear a path, to protect people. He has no hesitation about this. It is just what you do. You help people. It is that simple for him. And his simplicity is not stupidity. It is a kind of moral clarity that the more educated, more sophisticated characters like Seok-woo have lost somewhere along the way. The train cars become a series of battlegrounds and safe zones. The infected have taken over some cars, and the uninfected are trying to hold on in others. Every time a door needs to be crossed, every time someone has to move through an infected car, it is a terrifying, breathless sequence of action and horror. One of the most striking visual elements of the zombie design in this film is the way the infected move. They are fast, but they have this characteristic way of bending and contorting their bodies, almost like they are broken, like their bones and joints are operating at the wrong angles. It is deeply unsettling to watch. And they pile on top of each other. They stack and climb and surge forward in waves. Watching a horde of them move is like watching a single living organism made up of hundreds of bodies. The survivors have managed to gather in a few cars near the front of the train. The situation is desperate, but for the moment, they are alive. And this is where the movie shifts from pure action and horror into something more complex. Because now the characters have to deal with each other. There is tension immediately. The people who are in the safe cars do not trust the people trying to get in. They do not know who might be bitten. They do not know who might turn. Fear is making people irrational and cruel in ways they would not recognize in themselves on an ordinary day. Yon-suk is particularly dangerous in this environment because he is smart and articulate, and he knows how to use words to manipulate people. He positions himself as a voice of reason, as someone who is making the hard, necessary choices. He argues that letting unknown people into the safe cars is too risky. He argues that the priority should be the people who are already inside. He frames selfishness as wisdom. And some of the other passengers, because they are scared and because he speaks with confidence, start listening to him. This is one of the most chilling aspects of the film. The zombies are scary, yes. But Yon-suk is scary in a different way. He represents the kind of person who is always around in a crisis, the person who uses the chaos to advance their own interests while telling everyone they are doing it for the greater good. He is not a monster in the zombie sense. He is a monster in the very human sense. Meanwhile, Seok-woo is beginning to change. Spending this time with his daughter, seeing the world through her eyes, watching Sang-hwa and Seong-kyeong and how they treat each other and the people around them, something is stirring inside him. He is starting to see himself more clearly. He is starting to understand that the way he has been living, the choices he has been making professionally and personally, have made him into something he does not want to be. Soo-an is important in this transformation. She is not passive. She speaks up. When the people in the safe car refuse to let others in, when they turn their backs on people who are clearly uninfected and clearly terrified, and clearly just people who need help, Soo-an speaks up. She says that what they are doing is wrong. She is a child, and she has more moral courage in that moment than most of the adults around her. This is noticed. This matters. There are action sequences throughout this middle portion of the film that are genuinely extraordinary. The scene where a group of characters, including Seok-woo and Sang-hwa, have to move through several infected cars to reach the others is among the most intense sequences in any zombie film ever made. They are moving through a narrow tube full of infected people, moving in complete darkness at one point because the zombies, it turns out, have trouble navigating in the dark. They can hear and sense movement, but their vision seems to require a certain amount of light to function properly. So the characters hold still, hold their breath, and move slowly, agonizingly slowly, while infected people sway and jerk around them in the darkness. It is a masterclass in tension and filmmaking. Director Yon-suk uses sound design brilliantly in this sequence. The wet, clicking sounds of the infected, the careful, controlled breathing of the survivors, the rumble of the train itself, constant and indifferent to everything that is happening inside it. Every small sound feels enormous. Sang-hwa and Seok-woo develop a relationship during these sequences that is one of the emotional cores of the film. They are very different men. Sang-hwa is working class, physical, direct. Seok-woo is educated, white-collar, careful with words. In normal life, they might not have much to say to each other. But in this situation, stripped of all the normal social markers, they find common ground. They both want to protect the people they love. They both are willing to fight for that. And Sang-hwa, who has no reason to be generous towards Seok-woo, is generous anyway. He extends a hand. He includes. He does not hold grudges. Seok-woo slowly, painfully, starts becoming someone worthy of that generosity. The situation on the train keeps getting worse. The train makes stops at stations, and at each station, the outside world provides information about how bad things are getting. The zombie outbreak is not contained. It is spreading everywhere. Cities are falling. Military and police are overwhelmed. There is nowhere safe to go. Busan is supposed to be a quarantine zone, supposedly still clean and controlled, and that becomes the goal, the only goal. Get to Busan. If we can just get to Busan, maybe we can survive. At one of the station stops, a devastating sequence unfolds. Some of the characters get off the train to try to get information or find another route, and they discover that the outside world is even more terrifying than what is happening on the train. The station is full of infected. The military that was supposed to be protecting people has itself been compromised. There are burning vehicles and bodies and the sounds of distant screaming. The world is ending, and the characters are watching it happen from the platform of a train station, and then they have to get back on the train because the train, as dangerous as it is still the safest place they have. During this sequence, some characters are lost. The losses in this film are not kept at a comfortable distance. The movie does not kill off only the characters you do not care about. It kills off people you have come to like, people you have been rooting for, and it does it in ways that are genuinely heartbreaking. One of the most emotionally devastating sequences in the film involves the two elderly sisters. One of them is bitten during the chaos at the station. She does not tell anyone at first. She knows what it means. She has seen enough to understand. And so she sits with her sister and she holds her hand and they talk quietly about things from their lives, memories, small things, and the infected sister is waiting for the moment to come, waiting for the turn so that she can do something to protect her sister before it is too late. When that moment comes, it is handled with a restraint and a grace that makes it all the more devastating. It is one of the most quietly heartbreaking moments in the film. Yon-suk escalates his villainy as the stakes rise. It is not enough for him that he has been keeping people out of the safe cars. As the situation gets more desperate, he starts making choices that directly cause the deaths of other characters. He manipulates information. He uses other people as shields. He takes actions that are calculated to improve his own chances of survival at the direct expense of everyone around him. There is a scene where he essentially sacrifices a group of people by misdirecting them into a dangerous situation. He does it with calm, with a reasonable-sounding explanation, with the manner of a man who is simply making difficult but necessary decisions. And watching it happen, knowing what he is doing while the people around him do not fully see it yet, is one of the most uncomfortable and effective villain sequences in recent Korean cinema. What makes Yon-suk such a powerful character and such a powerful villain is that he is not supernatural or cartoonishly evil. He is just a man who has decided that his life is worth more than other people's lives. And the movie is arguing that this mindset, this particular brand of selfishness disguised as practicality, is itself a kind of infection. It spreads. It contaminates. It makes other people act in ways they would not otherwise act. And it is far more insidious than the zombie virus because it operates through choice, not through biological compulsion. Seok-woo sees this. And watching Yon-suk operate is like holding up a mirror. Because Seok-woo, at the beginning of the film, operated on similar principles. He was not as extreme, he would not have deliberately put other people in danger. But the fundamental worldview, the idea that you look out for yourself first, and everyone else second or not at all, that was his worldview too. Watching what that worldview looks like in its most extreme form is part of what changes him. The confrontation between the two men, not a physical confrontation but a moral one, is one of the most satisfying threads in the film. Seok-woo slowly and painfully moves away from Yon-suk's philosophy and towards something else, toward the understanding that what Sang-hwa knew instinctively was right. You help people. You protect people. That is what matters. Sang-hwa deserves his own section because he is arguably the most important character in the film in terms of what the film is trying to say. He is not the main character. The movie follows Seok-woo and Soo-an most closely. But Sang-hwa is the moral compass of the film. He is the standard against which all the other characters are measured. From his very first scene, he is doing things for other people. He is attentive to his wife. He is physically protective. He is funny and warm, and he does not take himself too seriously. When the crisis begins, he does not hesitate. He starts fighting. He starts helping. He does not stop to calculate whether helping is worth it. It just is. His relationship with Seok-woo develops beautifully. There is an early moment of tension between them, a moment where Seok-woo's selfishness is briefly on display and Sang-hwa notices it. But Sang-hwa does not hold on to that. He moves past it. He decides who Seok-woo could be rather than fixating on who he is in that moment. And that generosity of spirit, that decision to believe in people's capacity to do better, is one of the things that makes Sang-hwa so powerful as a character. As the film moves toward its climax, Sang-hwa is put in situations that require increasingly larger sacrifices. He is bitten. And he knows he is bitten. He tells his wife. He holds her, and they have a moment together, a quiet, intimate moment amid all the chaos that is deeply moving. He does not break down. He does not fall apart. He stays himself, steady and loving and brave, right up until the end. He has one final act to perform before he turns, and he performs it with everything he has. He holds a door. He holds it against a wave of infected, giving the other survivors time to get through, and he holds it until he cannot hold it anymore. The image of Sang-hwa, this big, physically powerful man, standing in a doorway and holding back a tide of infected, buying precious seconds for people he barely knows, is one of the defining images of the film. It encapsulates everything the movie is trying to say about what heroism really looks like. It is not glamorous. It is not painless. It is just the decision to put yourself between the danger and the people you love, and to hold that position for as long as you can. His death is the emotional gut punch of the film. After everything he has survived, after everything he has done, after all the warmth and humor and strength he has brought to the story, watching him go is almost unbearable. His wife, Seong-kyeong, knows it is happening. And her grief, her trying to stay composed because she is pregnant and she cannot fall apart, is heartbreaking in a way that is very hard to put into words. Seong-kyeong's pregnancy, throughout this film, is not just a physical detail. It is deeply symbolic. She is carrying new life through a world that is dying. She is literally the future, walking through the apocalypse. There is something about her character that is consistently grounded and practical. She is scared. Of course she is scared, but she manages her fear with a steadiness that feels earned rather than performed. She and Sang-hwa are a genuinely good couple, and what makes them good is not that they are perfect or that everything between them is easy, but that they operate as a genuine team. They look out for each other. They communicate. When things are at their worst, they are still thinking about the other person. After Sang-hwa is gone, Seong-kyeong continues.
She has to.
She is carrying his child. She carries that knowledge with her through the rest of the film, and it gives her journey a particular weight. Every decision she makes, every step she takes, is for the baby, for the future that Sang-hwa gave his life to protect. Her relationship with Soo-an becomes very important in the film's final act. Seong-kyeong takes Soo-an under her wing, Not in an explicit or formal way, but in the way that happens naturally when adults who care about children recognize that a child needs protection and attention. And Soo-an, who has been watching so much throughout this journey, responds to that care. These two characters, the pregnant woman and the little girl, become a kind of unit, looking out for each other in the way that people do when circumstances force them together, and they discover that the circumstances have chosen well. The teenage couple provides the film with its romantic subplot, but it is handled with enough specificity and feeling to avoid being generic. Yong-guk is a baseball player, and his baseball bat becomes one of the film's recurring visual motifs. He uses it to fight zombies, yes, but it also represents his whole way of moving through the world. Measured, practiced, physical. He is not a natural leader or a natural thinker, but he is brave in the straightforward way that some young people are brave before life has taught them to be afraid. Jin-hee is his girlfriend, and she is sweet without being a pushover. There are moments where she makes choices that show real courage, real love. Their story comes to a devastating turning point. Without going through every detail, the film does not allow the young couple to escape entirely unscathed. The losses they experience force Yong-guk to make decisions and take actions that no 17-year-old should have to make or take. And watching him do it, watching him draw on some deep reserve of will that he probably did not know he had, is another one of the film's many quietly devastating moments. It is worth taking a moment to talk about the setting of this film, because the train is not just a backdrop. The train is a character. The narrow corridors and the fixed direction of travel create a unique kind of tension. You cannot go sideways. You cannot go around. You can only go forward or backward, and both directions are dangerous. The train forces confrontation. There is no escape hatch, no side door, no alternative route. Every decision is made within these cramped, linear confines. The seats, the windows, the connecting doors between cars, all of these become props in a very specific kind of action choreography that is unlike anything you see in zombie films set in open environments. Director Sang-hwa and his team clearly understood that the train needed to feel like a trap as well as a sanctuary. The same walls that keep the zombies out also keep the survivors in. The same locks that protect you can also shut you off from help. There is a moment where the train goes through a tunnel. Everything goes dark. And in the darkness, the rules change. The infected, who have been relentlessly pursuing the survivors, lose some of their edge. And the survivors, who have been running, get a brief chance to move through infected-filled cars while the infected cannot see them clearly. This is used brilliantly in the film. It is a moment of reversed power, a moment where the survivors get to use the environment in their favor. But it does not last. The tunnel ends. The light comes back. And the chaos resumes. The high speed of the KTX train also adds to the tension. You cannot stop this thing easily. You cannot get off between stations. The train is moving and it is going to keep moving, and the destination, Busan, keeps getting closer and closer while the situation inside keeps getting more and more desperate. There is a ticking clock quality to the whole film that the train setting makes absolutely literal. The film's third act is an escalating series of heartbreaks and sacrifices that builds to one of the most emotionally devastating finales in recent memory. The survivors, reduced now to just a small group from the larger crowd that started the journey, are trying to get the train to Busan. But the train has been compromised in multiple ways. There are infected throughout most of the cars. The driver situation has become complicated. And Yon-suk, still operating in his own interests, has taken actions that have made things worse for everyone. There is a confrontation between Seok-woo and Yon-suk that represents the thematic heart of the film made explicit. These are not two men fighting over survival resources. This is two philosophies fighting each other. Seok-woo has arrived at the point where he understands clearly what has been wrong with the way he has been living and thinking. And Yon-suk represents the end point of that wrong philosophy, what it looks like when the logic of pure self-interest is followed to its natural conclusion. Seok-woo does not become a saint overnight. He has not had some magical transformation that erases who he was. But he has made a genuine shift in what he is willing to do and who he is willing to do it for. He has expanded his circle. He has gone from a man who is thinking only of himself and barely even thinking of his daughter to a man who is now thinking of Seong-kyeong and Yong-guk and the other survivors with the same care he gives to Soo-an. This expansion of concern, this widening of who counts as worth protecting, is the film's central moral movement. The action in the third act is relentless. The film is moving toward its climax, and it is pulling out everything it has. There are action sequences that are filmed with an energy and a precision that is genuinely impressive. The choreography of how humans and zombies move in these confined spaces, the editing that creates rhythm and dread and then releases it briefly before building again, the sound design that fills every moment with the sounds of running feet and crashing bodies and the shriek of the train, all of it comes together in a final act that is both thrilling and devastating. And then Seok-woo does what Sang-hwa did. Not in exactly the same way, but in spirit completely the same. He reaches a moment where he has to choose between his own survival and the survival of the people he is protecting. And he makes the choice without hesitation. He has become the man he was always capable of being. He has just needed this journey, this terrible, beautiful, brutal journey, to get there. He is bitten. He knows he is bitten. And in the time he has left, in the moments between the bite and the turn, he does everything he can. He gets Soo-an and Seong-kyeong to safety. He fights with everything he has. And then, when he feels the turn coming, when he feels himself starting to lose himself, he has one last conscious moment. A moment of memory. He sees his daughter as a newborn baby, the first time he held her, and the love in that memory, the purity and simplicity of it, is overwhelming. This is what he was trying to protect all along. Not his career or his money or his status. This small, fierce, wonderful girl who sang in a choir and just wanted her dad to be there. He goes over the edge of the train before he fully turns. He does not want to become something that could hurt his daughter. Even at the very end, his instinct is to protect her. Soo-an and Seong-kyeong are the only survivors of the central group. They are on the train as it crawls toward Busan. The train has been stopped short of the main station because the military has set up a blockade. There are soldiers ready to shoot anything that approaches, because they cannot take any chances, cannot risk letting the infected through. The train is stopped in a tunnel. It is dark, and Soo-an and Seong-kyeong have to walk through the darkness, through the tunnel, toward the checkpoint. And the soldiers at the checkpoint, who cannot see them clearly in the dark, are about to shoot. And then Soo-an starts to sing. She sings the same song she sang at the beginning of the film, the one she performed at school while her father was there on his phone, not really paying attention. She sings it in the dark tunnel, walking toward the guns, and her voice carries through the darkness, and the soldiers hear it, and they hear the voice of a child, not a monster, not a threat, just a child, and they lower their weapons. This ending is absolutely perfect. The song is the connective tissue of the whole film. It was sung at the beginning in a context of absence and inattention. It is sung at the end in a context of unbearable loss and extraordinary courage. The little girl who wanted her father to hear her has come through something no person should ever have to survive, and she is singing, and the world hears her. Seong-kyeong, next to her, is weeping. And the audience, if they have any heart at all, is weeping with her. The soldiers let them through. The two survivors emerge from the tunnel into daylight. The movie ends. Character analysis in depth. Now, let us go deeper into what these characters represent and what they go through on a level beyond just the plot. Seok-woo, at the start, is a portrait of a particular kind of modern man. He is not a villain. He has not done anything monstrous. But he has made a series of small, quiet compromises over the years that have added up to a life that lacks genuine connection. He works in finance, a profession that the film deliberately codes as morally ambiguous. His job, as briefly hinted at in the film, may have involved decisions that hurt ordinary people, decisions that were good for the bottom line but bad for real human beings. This is never dwelt on heavily, but it is there in the background, part of who he is when the film begins. His relationship with his daughter is the wound at the center of his character. He loves her. That is not in question. But love without attention is incomplete love. And Soo-an knows this. She is too young to articulate it fully, but she feels it. The birthday present he gets her twice. The school performance where he is physically present but emotionally somewhere else. These details tell you everything you need to know about where Seok-woo is at the start of the story. The journey forces him to be completely present. On this train, there is no meeting to attend, no call to take, no email to answer. There is only this moment, this child, this crisis. And in the stripping away of all his usual distractions, he is forced to actually be there. And being there, fully there, he discovers that he is capable of things he did not know he was capable of. Tenderness specifically. Real, undefended tenderness toward his daughter and eventually toward the other survivors. His growth is not announced. It is shown in small actions. The way he begins to include others in his thinking when making decisions. The way he starts listening rather than just calculating. The moment when he stops moving forward and turns back to help someone he could have left behind. These are quiet moments, but they add up to a transformation that feels earned and real rather than forced or convenient. Sang-hwa is the film's purest character in terms of his moral simplicity, but he is not simple in a reductive way. He is clear. He knows who he is and what matters to him, and that clarity is presented as a profound kind of wisdom in a world where the more educated, more sophisticated characters are tangled up in their own rationalizations. The moment that defines Sang-hwa most completely is his conversation with Seong-kyeong on the train, when things are bad, but not yet at their worst. He talks about the baby. He talks about wanting his kid to have a better world. He is funny and warm and a little bit silly about it, the way people are when they're talking about something they love completely. And in that moment, you understand everything about this man. He is not complex. He is complete. There is a difference. Soo-an is the moral witness of the film. She watches. She takes in everything. And she does not accept the compromises and the rationalizations that the adults around her accept. When people are turned away from the safe car, she says it is wrong. When her father makes a decision that prioritizes their safety over someone else's, she calls it out. She is not preachy or annoying about it. She is just honest in the way children are when they have not yet learned to make themselves comfortable with injustice. Her relationship with her father is the emotional spine of the film. Their journey from emotional distance to genuine connection, from politeness to real love, is what makes the ending so devastating. By the time Seok-woo is gone, we know that they got there. They reached each other. The love was real and was known by both of them. That is both a comfort and a grief. Seong-kyeong's arc is one of sustained endurance and quiet strength. She does not have the dramatic action sequences that Sang-hwa has. Her heroism is more internal, the heroism of continuing to move and continuing to care for others when everything around her is horror. She grieves for Sang-hwa in the spaces between crises. She holds Soo-an's hand. She keeps going. And at the end, she is the one who walks out of the tunnel into the light, carrying new life inside her, representing the possibility that something good can survive even this. Yon-suk's analysis is perhaps the most important because he is where the film's social commentary is most explicit. He is the representation of a certain kind of institutional selfishness, the kind that learns to dress itself up in the language of reason and necessity. Every terrible thing he does, he has a justification for. He is not acting out of malice, he would say. He is acting out of pragmatism. And this is precisely what makes him so dangerous and so believable. In a more conventional film, Yon-suk would be cartoonishly evil. He would gloat. He would reveal his wickedness openly. He would be recognizable as the villain from the first moment. But Train to Busan is too smart for that. He is recognizable, yes, but not because he is a movie villain. He is recognizable because he is a type of person that exists in the real world. He is every executive who cut jobs to protect the stock price. He is every politician who talked about necessary sacrifices while making sure the sacrifices were made by other people. He is every person who has ever said, "I cannot worry about that because I have to worry about this," and made that logic a permanent, systemic part of how they live. His end in the film is fitting. The very logic that he has been applying to others is eventually applied to him, and he discovers that he has no real allies because he has never been anyone's real ally. He has been using people, and people eventually figure out when they are being used. Themes and symbolism. The central theme of Train to Busan is selfishness versus solidarity, and everything in the film is built around this opposition. The zombie virus itself is a metaphor. It is a disease that spreads when you get too close to other people, when you let your guard down, when you try to help someone. On a surface level, this seems to be saying that connection is dangerous. But the film argues the opposite. Because the characters who refuse connection, who refuse to open the doors, who refuse to help, who prioritize only themselves, those characters cause more deaths than the zombies do. The virus is not the real threat. The virus just reveals who people are. The real threat is the choice to stop caring about other human beings. The train as a metaphor is rich and multi-layered. South Korea is a country that has gone through extraordinarily rapid economic development in the past several decades. This rapid development has created prosperity, but also enormous inequality and enormous pressure on individuals to achieve, to compete, to succeed in a very specific and narrow way. The KTX, the high-speed train, is itself a symbol of this modernity, this speed, this relentless forward momentum. Everyone is on the train. They are all moving at the same speed in the same direction. But they are not all in the same car. There are class distinctions, there are barriers between sections, and when the crisis hits, those barriers become deadly. The film is very specifically critical of Korean corporate culture and the values it promotes. Seok-woo is a product of that culture. He works in finance. He is good at accumulating advantage. He thinks of the world in terms of who benefits and who bears the cost. And the film spends its entire running time dismantling that worldview and showing him something better. The pregnant Seong-kyeong, as mentioned earlier, is a symbol of the future. Her baby represents the possibility that the world can be rebuilt, that something good can come after the catastrophe. And the fact that she survives, that she and Soo-an walk out of the tunnel together, suggests that the film believes in that possibility. It is not an easy optimism. It is not a naive optimism. It is an optimism that has been earned through enormous cost. But it is there. Soo-an's song is a recurring symbol of humanity's capacity for beauty and for connection. Music is something that zombies cannot do. It is something that only living, feeling, conscious beings can produce and respond to. When she sings in the tunnel at the end, she is not just identifying herself to the soldiers. She is asserting her humanity. She is saying, here I am, a person, something that feels and loves and grieves, not a monster, not a threat, a child. The light and dark imagery throughout the film is used with great intentionality. The tunnels are moments of danger, but also moments of strange protection. In the dark, the infected lose some of their advantage. The survivors learn to use the darkness. And in the end, it is through the darkness of a tunnel that the survivors reach the light of safety. This is a classic hero's journey structure, but it is employed with enough specificity that it does not feel generic. Foreshadowing is used heavily and skillfully throughout the film. The dead deer at the very beginning, coming back to life wrong, foreshadows everything that is coming. The fact that it is on a road, blocking traffic, having been hit by a vehicle, suggests something about the way the old world was disrupted. Sang-hwa's physicality and his protectiveness are established so thoroughly in his first scenes that when he makes his final sacrifice, it feels completely consistent with who he has always been. Seok-woo's habit of working through every situation, of calculating, of thinking about advantage and disadvantage, is established so clearly that his gradual abandonment of that framework feels like a genuine transformation rather than a sudden change. The class dynamics in the film are also worth examining carefully. The safe car, at one point controlled by the upper-class and white-collar passengers led by Yon-suk, is a microcosm of Korean class inequality. The people who are kept out are not less deserving of survival. They are just less powerful. And the film makes very clear that the decisions made by the people inside the safe car, the decisions to keep others out, to prioritize their own comfort and safety, directly result in deaths that did not have to happen. This is not a subtle point, but the film does not belabor it either. It trusts its audience to make the connection. The zombie outbreak is the extreme version of what happens when a society decides that some lives matter more than others. Filmmaking techniques and visual style. Sang-hwa's direction is extraordinarily confident for a live-action debut. He has an instinctive understanding of how to use the confined space of the train to generate tension, how to cut between different action threads in a way that builds rather than diffuses energy, and how to balance the large-scale action sequences with the intimate character moments that make you care about what happens in those action sequences. The cinematography, handled by Lee Hyung-deok, is a crucial element of the film's success. The camera is often close. It puts you in the train with the characters. You feel the narrowness of the corridors, the proximity of the danger, the press of bodies. There are moments of wider framing too, usually when the film wants to establish the scale of the catastrophe, the images of cities burning and overrun, seen through train windows, a reminder of the world outside the narrow metal tube that has become everything. The editing, by Yong-guk, creates a rhythm that is almost musical. The film knows when to accelerate and when to pull back. It knows how to use silence after noise and noise after silence. It knows how to let a moment breathe just long enough to feel something before pulling you back into the action. The zombie choreography deserves special mention. The infected in this film were clearly trained extensively. The way they move, that bent, broken, contorted motion, is something that had to be carefully designed and rehearsed. It is not just running. It has a specific quality, a specific wrongness, that is the result of actors learning to move their bodies in a fundamentally unnatural way. Combined with the practical effects and makeup work that gives the infected their visual horror, the result is a zombie aesthetic that feels completely original. The sound design is brilliant throughout. The train itself, its engine noise, its rhythm, becomes a kind of baseline against which all other sounds are measured. The sounds of the infected, the clicking, the shrieking, the wet sounds of their movement, are deeply unpleasant in a way that is designed to trigger visceral discomfort. And the music, composed by Jang Young-gyu, knows exactly when to appear and when to stay silent. Some of the most intense sequences in the film have very little music. The silence makes them feel more real, more immediate, more terrifying. The film was not based on a novel or a real historical event. It is an original story, conceived by Sang-hwa, though it does draw on the long tradition of zombie cinema that preceded it. Sang-hwa has cited George Romero's work as an influence, particularly Romero's use of the zombie genre as social commentary. But Train to Busan is thoroughly Korean in its specific concerns, its specific social landscape, and its specific emotional register. It could not have been made anywhere else. There was an animated prequel film called Seoul Station that Sang-hwa released around the same time as Train to Busan. Seoul Station is set in the same universe and shows the beginning of the outbreak from the perspective of homeless people on the streets of Seoul, a group that is even more economically and socially marginalized than the working-class characters on the train. The two films together form a powerful diptych, showing the same event from very different class perspectives, and the animated film's grimmer, more unforgiving tone serves as a complement to the relative emotional catharsis of Train to Busan. Train to Busan fits into a tradition of father-daughter stories in Korean cinema that use the relationship between a parent and child as a way to examine social values and the costs of a certain kind of masculinity and professional success. The absent or emotionally unavailable father is a recurring figure in Korean storytelling, reflecting a genuine social reality in a culture where male professional identity is frequently prioritized over family presence and emotional engagement. The father who works too much, who is there physically but not emotionally, who has sacrificed intimacy for achievement, is something Korean audiences recognize from their own lives. What makes Train to Busan's treatment of this particular story so effective is that it does not sentimentalize or simplify the path to redemption. Seok-woo does not have a single moment of revelation that transforms him. He changes slowly, painfully, through accumulated experience and through watching other people, particularly Sang-hwa, model a different way of being in the world. And then he is asked to demonstrate his transformation in the most extreme possible way. His final act is not just a loving sacrifice. It is also an act of self-completion. He has been moving toward this his entire life, toward the moment where he would discover what actually matters to him and act on that discovery without reservation. The journey on the train simply compresses and accelerates a process that would have taken years in ordinary life, if it happened at all. The fact that he does not survive his transformation is one of the film's most honest and most painful choices. In a more conventional story, the father would have his redemption and then go home and be a better father. The genre conventions and the emotional logic of the family drama would support that ending. But Train to Busan does not offer it. It says the transformation is real, and it is complete, and it matters enormously, but the world does not reward virtue with survival. Good people die. Changed people die. What survives is not necessarily the person who changed, but the change itself, carried forward by those they loved and protected. Soo-an singing in the tunnel is the father's transformation surviving in the daughter. He made her who she is. His love, however imperfect and however late in coming, was real, and she carries it. And in the darkness, she sings. The acting in Train to Busan is across the board excellent, which is essential for this kind of film to work. When you are asking audiences to be genuinely devastated by the deaths of characters they have known for less than 2 hours, you need performances that are completely committed and completely believable. Gong, who plays Seok-woo, was already a well-known and respected actor in Korea before this film, but Train to Busan gave him a role that showed something new in him. The transformation he undergoes from the cool, slightly distant professional of the opening scenes to the fully engaged, fully committed father and protector of the climax is completely believable because he does not play it as a sudden conversion. It is a gradual thawing, a slow opening that has the texture of something real. Dong-seok, who plays Sang-hwa, is extraordinary. His physical presence is a huge part of the role, yes, but he brings warmth and humor and emotional depth that prevent the character from being just a muscle-bound protector figure. The love scenes between him and his wife, the quiet moments of tenderness amid the chaos, are deeply felt and completely convincing. His final sacrifice is so powerful partly because of how thoroughly he has made you love this character throughout the film. Kim Soo-an, the young actress who plays Soo-an, is remarkable. Child performances are notoriously difficult to get right, and this role requires her to carry enormous emotional weight in scene after scene. She does it with a naturalness and a depth of feeling that is extraordinary. The final scene in the tunnel, when she sings, is largely carried by her performance, and it is one of the great child performances in recent Korean cinema. Yong-guk as Seong-kyeong brings a quiet, internal strength to her role that complements Dong-seok's more extroverted performance beautifully. The grief she carries after Sang-hwa is gone is handled with extraordinary restraint and precision. Kim Yoo-sung as Yon-suk deserves enormous credit for taking a character that could have been a simple villain and making him so specific and so recognizable that he becomes genuinely chilling. He plays Yon-suk without ever tipping into caricature, always keeping the character within the realm of a real human being making real human choices, which is exactly what makes him so disturbing. Critical response and box office. Train to Busan was a massive commercial and critical success. When it was released in South Korea in the summer of 2016, it was a phenomenon. It broke opening weekend records and went on to become one of the highest-grossing South Korean films in history, earning over 93 billion Korean won, which translates to roughly $93 million worldwide. For a Korean-language genre film, this was an extraordinary result. Internationally, the film was screened at the midnight screening section of the Cannes Film Festival in May 2016, before its theatrical release, and it received a tremendous response from international critics and audiences. The Cannes premiere generated enormous international attention and helped position the film for strong international distribution. Critics praised the film almost universally. The balance between genre thrills and genuine emotional depth was the most commonly cited reason for the praise. Reviewers noted that the film managed to make you care about its characters in a way that most zombie films do not, and that this emotional investment made the horror more effective rather than less. The social commentary was also recognized and appreciated, with many critics noting that the film had something genuine to say about class and selfishness and solidarity, and that it said it through the genre rather than in spite of it. On Rotten Tomatoes, the film holds a score in the mid-90s, putting it among the best-reviewed zombie films ever made. On Metacritic, the critical consensus is similarly strong. Audience scores mirror the critical reception, which is somewhat unusual for a genre film and speaks to how broadly the movie connects with viewers of very different tastes. The film was submitted by South Korea as its entry for consideration for the Academy Award for Best International Feature Film, though it ultimately was not nominated. It won numerous awards at Korean film festivals and ceremonies, including Best Film at the Grand Bell Awards, which are the most prestigious film awards in South Korea. Some criticisms were raised. A minority of critics felt that the social commentary was too on the nose, too explicit in its messaging. Some felt that certain character deaths were emotionally manipulative, designed to make you cry rather than emerging naturally from the story. And a few critics, particularly those most deeply invested in zombie genre conventions, had varying opinions about how the film handled some of its action sequences, feeling that certain moments stretched credibility even within the internal logic of the story. These are legitimate criticisms, but they are minority views. The overwhelming response to Train to Busan from critics and audiences worldwide was that this is a genuinely great film that happens to be a zombie movie, or perhaps more accurately, a zombie movie that happens to be genuinely great. The ending explained. The ending of Train to Busan is not ambiguous in terms of what literally happens. Soo-an and Seong-kyeong walk out of the tunnel and are allowed to pass through the military checkpoint because Soo-an sings and the soldiers hear a human voice and choose not to shoot. But the ending resonates on multiple levels, beyond the literal plot. The fact that it is the child who saves them is deeply intentional. Throughout the film, the children in the story, particularly Soo-an, have been the ones who most clearly see what is right and wrong. They have not yet been fully shaped by the self-serving logic that the adult world operates on. Soo-an saying it is wrong to close the doors on people who need help is a child seeing clearly what the adults around her are trying to rationalize. And at the end, it is this child's voice, literally her voice, her song, that cuts through all the fear and suspicion and military protocol and reaches the human beings underneath. The song is also a kind of prayer. Or maybe a kind of promise. Soo-an is singing the future into existence. She is saying, "Here I am still here. We are still here, we survived this, and we are still human, and we are still capable of beauty." In a world that has collapsed into violence and death, a child singing in the dark is one of the most powerful images of hope you can imagine. Seong-kyeong's pregnancy, and the life she is about to bring into the world, is part of this same image of hope. The world has been devastated, but life continues. The future, however uncertain, is still possible. The ending does not suggest that everything is fine. It would be dishonest to pretend that everything is fine. Most of the world, as we know it in this story, has fallen. The people who died throughout the film stay dead. Their sacrifices are honored by the survival of those they protected, but they are not resurrected. The grief is real and will remain real. But the film ends on this image of a child's voice and a pregnant woman and morning light at the end of a tunnel, and it is choosing to end there. It is making a statement with that choice. The statement is, even after everything, even after all the loss and the horror and the terrible things people do to each other, there is still this. There is still a child singing. There is still love. There is still a future. Hold on to it. The music and sound in detail. Jang Young-guk's score for Train to Busan is one of the most effectively deployed film scores of recent years, not because it is constantly present and constantly dramatic, but because of how carefully it is used. The score knows when to stay silent. During the most intense action sequences, the film frequently pulls back the music entirely and lets the natural sounds of the environment carry the terror. The sounds of running feet on metal floors. The crash of bodies against windows. The wet sounds of the infected. The constant mechanical roar of the train. These sounds, organized and shaped by brilliant sound design, do more to create terror than any dramatic orchestral swell could. When the music does appear, it tends to arrive in the quieter moments. The intimate moments between characters, the moments of loss, the moments of connection. The score is primarily an emotional score rather than an action score. It is there to help you feel the grief and the love rather than to amplify the excitement of the action. This is exactly the right choice for this film, because the film is fundamentally about feeling rather than about excitement. The song that Soo-an sings appears in the film 3 times. The first time is at the beginning at the school performance, and it is presented as a piece of music without much context. You hear it, and you think it is a nice song. The second time it appears is more fragmented, in a context of memory or thought. By the third time it appears, in the tunnel at the end, you know this song. You have lived with it through the entire film. And when you hear it again in that context, in the darkness of the tunnel, in the aftermath of everything the characters have been through, it carries all of that accumulated meaning with it. The effect is overwhelming. This is called a musical leitmotif, a recurring musical theme associated with a particular character or idea. Train to Busan uses it with economy and precision, allowing the simple repetition of a song to do emotional work that pages of dialogue could not do. The choice of a song, rather than an instrumental theme, is also significant. A song has words. A song carries human meaning in a direct way that pure music does not. And the words of the song that Soo-an sings are about longing and connection and love in a way that maps directly onto her relationship with her father. Every time we hear it, we hear the emotional content of that relationship, expressed in music. Sequel possibility and the Peninsula. A sequel was eventually made, called Peninsula, also directed by Sang-hwa, released in 2020. Peninsula is set in the same universe as Train to Busan, but is not a direct continuation of its story. It is set 4 years after the events of Train to Busan, in a South Korea that has been almost completely overrun and abandoned. A small group of survivors who escaped to Hong Kong are offered the chance to go back into the quarantine zone to retrieve a truck full of money. The critical response to Peninsula was more mixed than the response to Train to Busan. While it was commercially successful, many critics and audiences felt that it lacked the emotional depth and intimacy of the original. Train to Busan worked so well partly because of its confined setting and its focus on a small group of clearly drawn characters. Peninsula has a larger canvas and a more action movie structure, and something is lost in that expansion. Soo-an and Seong-kyeong do not appear in Peninsula, though the film is in the same universe and references the same events. Peninsula functions more as a companion piece than a true sequel, exploring the world that Train to Busan created rather than continuing the specific story of those specific characters. Whether more films will be made in this universe remains to be seen. The commercial success of Peninsula, despite the mixed critical response, suggests that there is appetite for more stories set in this world. But any future film will be working in the shadow of the original, which set a standard that is genuinely difficult to match. To fully appreciate what Train to Busan accomplished, it helps to place it in the broader context of world cinema and of zombie cinema specifically. The zombie genre has a long history. George Romero essentially invented the modern zombie with Night of the Living Dead in 1968, and for decades afterward, zombie films were largely seen as lower-budget, lower-prestige genre products. There were exceptions and there were brilliant films within the genre, but it was not generally taken seriously as a vehicle for meaningful artistic or social expression. Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later in 2002 began to change that perception. Edgar Wright's Shaun of the Dead demonstrated that zombie films could be used for genuine emotional storytelling. Zack Snyder's Dawn of the Dead remake was a slick, entertaining, technically accomplished piece of work. World War Z, despite its troubled production, showed that zombie films could operate on a genuinely global, epic scale. But Train to Busan arrived and did something that none of these films had quite managed. It combined genuinely thrilling genre filmmaking with genuine emotional depth and genuine social commentary, and it did so with a consistency of tone and a clarity of vision that made it feel like a unified artistic achievement rather than a collection of impressive elements. It is also part of the broader phenomenon of Korean cinema's rise to global prominence that culminated most visibly with Parasite's Best Picture win at the Academy Awards in 2020. Train to Busan arrived at a moment when the world was beginning to pay serious attention to what Korean filmmakers were doing, and it justified and amplified that attention. It showed that Korean genre cinema was not just technically accomplished, but emotionally sophisticated in ways that crossed cultural boundaries and resonated with audiences everywhere. The film's success internationally helped open doors for other Korean genre films and helped build the international audience for Korean cinema that eventually allowed something like Parasite to be not just a critical success, but a genuine mainstream phenomenon. Within Korean cinema, its success helped legitimize genre filmmaking as a vehicle for serious artistic and social expression. Korean filmmakers had always made genre films, but Train to Busan, along with a handful of other films from that era, demonstrated that genre could achieve both critical prestige and massive commercial success simultaneously. This opened space for other filmmakers to take genre more seriously and to bring more ambition and more depth to it. Within global zombie cinema, the film has been enormously influential. The fast-moving infected, which Train to Busan did not invent but executed with particular brilliance, became even more standard in zombie narratives after the film's success. More importantly, the film's balance of character development and genre action became a template that other filmmakers have tried to replicate, with varying degrees of success. The character of Sang-hwa specifically has become something of a cultural touchstone. The image of the big, physically powerful man who is also warm and funny and fiercely loving, who fights not for dominance or for glory, but simply because people need protecting, has resonated across cultures in ways that suggest it represents something people deeply respond to. Dong-seok has built much of his subsequent career on variations of this character, and the success of that career internationally suggests that the character type has universal appeal. The film also influenced how studios and streaming platforms thought about Korean content for international audiences. The massive international success of Train to Busan demonstrated that Korean films could reach global audiences without being dumbed down or westernized or made to fit into familiar English-language genre templates. Korean films could be Korean, specific and rooted in their culture and their language and their social reality, and still connect with viewers everywhere. This was an important lesson that contributed directly to the environment in which Parasite was made and in which it succeeded. The conversation about non-English language cinema that Train to Busan helped start and that Parasite helped bring to a peak is ongoing. The world is increasingly watching films and television shows from Korea, from Japan, from Spain, from everywhere, and engaging with them on their own terms rather than only accepting the watered-down international co-productions that used to be the only way non-English films could reach global markets. Train to Busan is part of the reason for this shift. To understand Train to Busan fully, it helps to understand something about the social and cultural context in which it was made and in which it was received in South Korea. South Korea has experienced extraordinary economic growth over the past several decades, transforming from a relatively poor country into one of the world's major economies. This transformation has been real and, in many ways, remarkable. But it has also created particular social pressures, particular forms of inequality, and particular cultural values that are not always healthy. Korean corporate culture is notorious for its demands. The concept of working extremely long hours, of sacrificing personal life for professional advancement, of placing enormous value on status and success, and the appearance of success, is deeply embedded in Korean society. This culture produces winners and losers, and the losers often have very little social safety net to fall back on. The film is specifically critical of this culture. Seok-woo is a product of it and an embodiment of it. His emotional unavailability, his calculation of every situation in terms of advantage and disadvantage, his instinct to protect himself first, these are not character flaws unique to him as an individual. They are character flaws that his culture has encouraged and rewarded. And the film is asking what happens to a person and to a society when these values are taken to their logical conclusion. The zombie outbreak is extreme and fantastical, but the social behavior it exposes is not. The decision to close the doors on people who need help, to prioritize the already comfortable over the already vulnerable, to use the language of pragmatism and necessity to excuse what is actually just selfishness, these are not zombie movie behaviors. These are human behaviors, Korean behaviors, universal behaviors. The film knows this. It is counting on the audience to know it too. The film was also made in the wake of the Sewol ferry disaster of 2014, a tragedy that devastated South Korea and generated enormous public anger about institutional failures and government incompetence. In the Sewol disaster, a ferry sank and over 300 people, mostly high school students, died. The rescue response was shockingly inadequate. The people with the power and the resources to help were slow to act or failed to act at all. The authorities gave confusing and sometimes false information to the families waiting for news. The parallels to Train to Busan are not coincidental. The film was in development after Sewol, and though it is not explicitly about the disaster, the themes of institutional failure, of authorities abandoning ordinary people in a crisis, of the gap between official reassurance and terrible reality, are clearly connected to the emotional landscape that Soo-an created in Korean public consciousness. Korean audiences watching Train to Busan in 2016 would have felt this connection viscerally, even if it was never explicitly stated. Let us talk about what specifically makes this film so effective, beyond the obvious elements of good directing and good acting. The first answer is specificity. The characters in this film are specific. They are not types or archetypes or genre placeholders. They are people. Sang-hwa is not just the tough guy who protects people. He is a specific man with a specific wife he loves in a specific way, with a specific way of speaking and moving and laughing. Soo-an is not just the innocent child. She is a specific girl with a specific relationship with a specific father, with a specific song that she sings and a specific capacity for moral clarity. The specificity is what allows you to care deeply about what happens to these people. The second answer is that the film earns its emotions. This is crucial and often overlooked in discussions of why the film works. Emotional manipulation is easy in films. You can kill a dog, and people will cry. You can play sad music over someone dying, and people will feel sad. But the feeling passes because it was not earned, not built. Train to Busan builds. Every death in the film has been prepared for, every sacrifice has been established as consistent with who that character is, every grief is a grief that has been growing since the character was introduced. By the time Sang-hwa makes his final stand, you have spent over an hour watching him be exactly the kind of person who would do that. The emotion of that moment is not manufactured. It is the logical culmination of everything that came before. The third answer is that the film believes in its themes. It is not cynical. It is not nihilistic. It has something genuine it wants to say about human nature and about what we owe each other, and it believes it. The best films always come from a place of genuine belief in the thing they are trying to communicate, and you can feel that in every frame of Train to Busan. The fourth answer is pacing. This film does not give you time to get bored, but it also does not give you action without rest or emotion without release. The rhythm is expertly managed. You run, then you breathe, then you grieve, then you run again. The movie knows exactly when to push and when to pull, and that knowledge is the difference between a film that exhausts you and a film that thrills you. The fifth answer, and perhaps the most important, is that the film is about something that matters. The things it is talking about, selfishness versus solidarity, the way crisis exposes character, the cost of emotional distance, and the reward of emotional openness, are not minor or trivial things. They are the things that determine the quality of human life and the health of human society. A film about things that matter has an advantage over a film that is just trying to entertain, because the audience brings their real selves to it, and they leave with something real. Within the specific canon of zombie films, Train to Busan occupies a unique and important position. It is sometimes compared to World War Z because both films feature fast-moving infected and a sense of global catastrophe. But World War Z is fundamentally a survival thriller with action hero logic, while Train to Busan is fundamentally a character drama that happens to use zombie horror as its mechanism. The emotional register is completely different. It is sometimes compared to 28 Days Later because both films use their zombie stories to make social points and both are genuinely interested in human psychology under extreme stress. The comparison is more apartment. But 28 Days Later has a rawness, a stripped-down quality, that reflects its extremely low-budget and guerrilla production style. Train to Busan is more polished, more visually controlled, and more emotionally structured. The comparison that feels most accurate to many film critics is to Romero's original zombie films, particularly Dawn of the Dead. Like Romero's work, Train to Busan is using zombies as a way to talk about a specific society and its specific failures. And like Romero's work, it does not forget to be genuinely scary even while it is being genuinely thoughtful. The horror and the social commentary are not in competition. They are feeding each other. What Train to Busan added to the zombie canon is the emotional dimension, specifically the family drama, done at this level of depth and sophistication. There have been zombie films with family dynamics before. The Walking Dead explored this extensively over many seasons of television. But the compressed, focused, brilliantly economical version of this that Train to Busan achieves in a single 2-hour film is something new. It showed that the genre was capable of this. It raised the bar. Conclusion. Train to Busan is one of the most complete films of the last decade. Complete in the sense that it does everything it sets out to do, and it does all of it well. It is thrilling and terrifying and emotionally devastating and socially intelligent and technically accomplished and beautifully acted and impeccably directed. It works on every level it tries to work on. But more than any of that, it is a film about love, about the different kinds of love and what love costs and what it is worth. The love between a father and daughter that starts broken and ends whole. The love between a husband and wife that is so solid and so warm that it survives even the ending of everything. The love between strangers who are thrown together and choose to care for each other rather than fight over the scraps of survival. The film believes in love, not in a naive way. Not in a way that ignores the reality of Yon-suk and the choices he makes and the damage those choices cause. But in the sense that it believes love is what separates us from the infected, what makes us human, what gives survival its meaning. Without love, surviving is just continuing to exist. With love, it is something else. Something worth fighting for and worth dying for. Soo-an sings in the tunnel at the end because her father is gone and she is in the dark and she is terrified and she sings anyway. And the soldiers lower their weapons and let her through. And that is the whole movie, really. In the dark, when everything is lost and everything is wrong, the human thing to do is to sing anyway. To assert your humanity. To refuse to let the horror and the loss silence you. This is a film worth watching. It is worth watching more than once. Because the first time you watch it, you are trying to survive it, and the second time you watch it, you can actually see what the film is doing and how carefully and how lovingly it is assembled. It is worth recommending to people who say they do not like horror films, because what they usually mean is they do not like horror films that are only interested in being scary, and Train to Busan is so much more than that. It is one of those rare films that uses an extreme genre premise not as an excuse for spectacle, but as a way to illuminate something true about human nature. The zombies are real in this film in the sense that they are genuinely frightening, and the threat they represent is visceral and constant. But they are also symbolic, a walking, running, shrieking representation of every force in the world that wants to take our humanity from us, that wants to reduce us to something that only consumes and destroys. The heroes of this film resist that reduction. They remain human under the most extreme pressure imaginable. They love, and they grieve, and they sacrifice, and they sing. And in doing so, they earn their survival, and they earn their place in the memory of everyone who watches them. Train to Busan. 2016. Directed by Sang-hwa. A masterpiece. Share your thoughts in the comments.